All right, welcome back to Always Adaptive. My name is Randall James. I'm a strength and a running coach with 11 years of experience. And today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm going to tell you a little bit of my story. You've probably had this random fitness nerd pop into your news feed and you're like, who in the world is this guy blabbing about all kinds of random topics? Well, this random nerd has been through some pretty terrible stuff. And the fact that I am where I am is nothing short of a miracle in and of itself. I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted the goal of this video to be, and it's going to weave through multiple topics, and I didn't want to come off as some sort of like pharmaceutical shill. So I think it's good to state my intent of the video here. This video is intended to move you into action. If you're dealing with some sort of life-altering disease and have been around the ringer like me, you have to be your own biggest advocate. You have to do your own research. You have to train and change your nutrition habits. You have to experiment and take notes. This is also a video advocating for the ridiculous power of exercise. You only get this one body, and if you don't advocate for it, I promise you no one else will. But anyways, I'm going to start off telling you a little bit about my history with the disease ulcerative colitis. This is me now. But a couple of years ago, I was in the worst ulcerative colitis flare of my life. Colitis, for those of you that aren't familiar, is a type of inflammatory bowel disease that can cause painful ulcers, cancerous polyps, joint pain, nausea, and that's really just scratching the surface. I've had it for about 25 years now, going through many different types of medical treatments along the way and trying many different nutrition protocols on my own because not a single doctor talked to me about diet and lifestyle. Even today, the two most recent gastroenterologists that I've spoken with haven't said a peep about food. I've tried fasting, I've tried keto and carnivore style approaches, I've tried liquid diets. Right now, I'm kind of settled on a typical Mediterranean approach. I seem to do best with carbs in my diet, especially for my performance during lifting and running. It seems to be best with carbs. But a little over 2 years ago, I was going through a bad breakup that really took its toll on me. Over the years, I found that one of my biggest triggers is stress. Getting in arguments and such really puts me over the edge. There are, of course, nutritional triggers as well, but stress is the big one for me personally. Anyways, I was losing a lot of blood daily, and I was losing a serious amount of muscle mass. At my worst, I dropped down to 165, which was an all-time low for me in my entire life. Just for reference, I'm almost 190 right now, but through solid training and nutrition principles, I was able to bounce back and gain a significant amount of my muscle back. So typically when people get diagnosed with colitis, their traditional therapy is a high dose of 4 to 6 weeks of prednisone, which is a glucocorticoid steroid. It depends on the severity of the flare, of course, but my experience has been around 40 to 60 milligrams, tapering down each week until you're no longer taking it. Usually this is used as an instant way of calming the system down. And they'll also combine this with infusions like Remicade, which is what I used to be on when I was under my parents' insurance a long, long time ago, which is classified as a biologic. One infusion can cost $4,000 to $7,000 cash price. So if you don't have insurance, this is basically not an option for you. They'll also throw some 5-ASA drugs into the mix, like mesalamine, which I was also on a couple of years ago. This is a very expensive drug. If you don't have insurance, it's $300 to $500 a month. So my only options as of late have been to continue to hemorrhage money for something that wasn't even really working in the first place, or take the road less traveled. None of the treatments I listed will cure colitis. In fact, they say there is no cure. You can only achieve remission. As soon as you stop taking any of those meds, you will likely flare up again, unless you figured out which nutritional and lifestyle triggers you've had. I've had this disease for a really long time, and I'm still trying to figure it out. So I asked, what's the cheapest, most effective option that I can take long term? Prednisone is extremely cheap. $4 to $15 per refill. The problem with it, though, is that while yes, it is very powerful, it works very quickly and effectively, it also comes with some pretty nasty side effects. Those are insomnia, muscle wasting, fat gain, insulin resistance, bone loss, depression. It can ruin your lipid profile, on and on it goes. So I asked the question, how do I take prednisone long term without having to deal with those nasty side effects? The idea that popped into my mind was, what if I only took it once a week instead of daily? And also, was my training routine and diet powerful enough to counteract those side effects? So I set off on a quest. I searched for studies that looked at intermittent prednisone's effectiveness on various conditions and also exercise having beneficial effects on the side effect profile of the drug. And wouldn't you know it, there's evidence for both. Starting with muscle mass and fat gain, which is probably up there as one of the most prevalent side effects, I want to talk about this really cool study entitled Resistance Exercise Prevents Glucocorticoid-Induced Myopathy in Heart Transplant Recipients. This one blew me away. Here's why. They looked at 14 male heart transplant recipients, average age early 50s. Now, if you've ever known anyone who's had an organ transplant, you know they're put on a very high dose of prednisone and other immunosuppressants. This isn't optional. It's basically to prevent what's called allograft rejection, which is like your immune system sees the new heart as foreign and tries to attack it. Rejection can be deadly, so these drugs are life or death. But that much prednisone comes at a cost: muscle wasting, fat gain, bone loss, the whole steroid side effects list. So these guys were in one of the most catabolic muscle wasting scenarios imaginable. Now, 2 months after their transplants, the researchers split them into two groups. One group did no exercise, that was the control group. The other group started a structured resistance training program, 3 days a week of lumbar extension and Nautilus machine training. And they followed them for around 6 months. And here's where it gets crazy. At 2 months post-transplant, before training even started, both groups were already wrecked by the prednisone. Lean mass had dropped around 4.3% from their pre-transplant baseline. And for the control group, it dropped by about 3.4%. Fat mass, of course, shot up too. The training group had an increase of 7.3%, and the control group an increase of 8.3%. So in just 8 weeks, they'd lost a really substantial amount of muscle and packed on a great deal of fat. Then the resistance training group started their program, and the control group stayed sedentary. At the 3-month mark, the training group had already completely reversed the fat gain back to basically baseline and then some. So they lost about 0.3 from baseline, and their lean mass was climbing. The control group, things got even worse. Fat mass blew up by 15.9%, and lean mass dropped further to minus 5% below baseline. At the 6-month mark, the difference was massive. The training group had done the impossible. They didn't just recover, they came back better. Lean mass was now 3.9% above pre-transplant levels, which is about 2.2 kilos of muscle gained in a situation where everyone basically expects muscle loss. Fat mass was now 5.1% lower than before the transplant. The control group went the other direction, hard. Lean mass kept falling. They were at minus 6.9% below baseline, about 4 kilos of muscle lost. And fat mass kept ballooning to 22% above baseline. Insane. And the really interesting thing about this is that body weight didn't change much in either group, which means the control group was literally swapping muscle for fat while the training group did the exact opposite. Strength was also the same story. Chest press, knee extension, lumbar extension, the training group improved 4 to 6 times more than the control group. This study is absolutely incredible. Resistance training completely erased the muscle wasting and fat gain caused by prednisone. The people who didn't train got slammed by classic steroid side effects. The people who trained, they avoided them entirely. And they actually came out stronger and with more muscle mass than before. And again, these weren't healthy young athletes. These were heart transplant recipients on some of the highest steroid doses you'll ever see. And the experiment that I ran also had similar results. I'll get to those shortly. That's the exciting stuff. We're going to go over my blood work. But patience, my friends. There's another study I want to show you, and this one really blew me away. It's titled Effects of Moderate Physical Training on Prednisone-Induced Protein Wasting, a study of whole body and bone protein metabolism. They took 8 healthy untrained volunteers and had them go through 2 trials of prednisone. One trial was prednisone alone, 30 milligrams a day for 9 days, and the other trial was the same prednisone dose, but here's the key. It was given after a 4-week jogging program. That program was just 2.5 miles, 4 days a week, nothing extreme. Now, I'll be honest, I did not pay for the full text of this study because it's expensive. So maybe this is a typo, but I can only go off what the researchers actually wrote. And according to them, the prednisone wasn't taken during the jogging. It was taken after 4 weeks of jogging. They used a really precise tracer method, giving people a labeled amino acid, 15N-glycine, and measured how fast it was broken down and rebuilt. That's called whole body protein turnover. And it tells you how fast your body is breaking down and rebuilding protein. Here's what they found. For the exercise alone group, protein turnover went up by about 19%, and that's for the right reasons. Protein synthesis jumped by 27%, and their bodies were building and repairing muscle. That's what you want to see. For the prednisone alone group, protein turnover also went up 17%, but for the wrong reason. Protein breakdown increased by 21%. That's pure catabolism. The exercise and prednisone group completely normalized everything. Protein turnover, synthesis, and breakdown all looked exactly like baseline control values, as if they weren't on prednisone at all. And when they measured muscle protein breakdown directly using a marker called 3-methylhistidine, it was the same story. Prednisone alone ramped up muscle breakdown. Exercise plus prednisone, back to normal. So think about what that means. Even a short, moderate jogging program, just 4 weeks, was enough to armor plate their bodies against prednisone's catabolic effects. They weren't even exercising while taking the drug. The adaptations they built during those 4 weeks were strong enough to protect them long afterwards. That leaves us with 2 trials showing that not only can you build muscle and lose fat during prednisone treatment, but that even cardio was protective of muscle protein breakdown. Furthermore, they didn't even do the cardio during the treatment. It was protective as a pre-treatment. So score another one for cardio. Y'all that have been here for a while, you know I'm a huge advocate for cardio, and I always will be. There was also a mouse study that I found that showed that once weekly prednisone improved adiposity, nutrient uptake, and muscle mass, but we're running low on time, so I won't get into that one. But combine that with the data that I've already reviewed, and it's looking really promising that I could largely mitigate some of the side effects of prednisone with my training routines. Now, I've got to tell you about this one last study because it hits on something that I've personally been told by multiple doctors and nurses. Quote, low dose prednisone doesn't really do anything, unquote. They usually say that the results that I've been experiencing, which once again, be patient, we're almost there, were due to the fact that I exercise very hard and focus on my food. I've heard that line over and over from doctors and nurses. Their thinking is that you would have to take a high dose in order for it to have an effect, which is why they usually prescribe at least 40 milligrams daily over the course of 4 weeks, depending on the severity of the disease the person is dealing with. And sure, while that makes sense, if the person is taking the drug for long enough, you can get the anti-inflammatory benefits over time without the risk of the side effects. Also, I was training and eating the exact same way I am now when I was going through that flare. So really the big thing that changed is the prednisone. And here's the thing, this study actually puts that idea to the test. It was titled Efficacy of Prednisone 1 to 4 milligrams a day in patients with rheumatoid arthritis, a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial. They looked at 31 rheumatoid arthritis patients who were already on long-term low-dose prednisone, just 1 to 4 milligrams per day, and they wanted to answer one question. Does this tiny dose actually make a difference, or are people just taking it out of habit? So they designed a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled withdrawal trial. Everyone started by switching to 1 milligram study tablets so that the researchers knew exactly what they were taking. Then, half of the patients were gradually switched to placebo, and the other half stayed on their same low dose of prednisone. They followed them for 24 weeks to see who stayed stable and who flared up. And the results, they were not subtle. In the prednisone group, only about 20% of people flared and had to drop out. In the placebo group, these are people that thought they were still getting prednisone, but they really weren't, 70% flared. That's a huge difference. So this study basically flat out confirms that even 1 to 4 milligrams of prednisone per day is doing something real to keep inflammation under control. And that brings me back to the idea of intermittent or once weekly dosing. 4 milligrams a day is about 28 milligrams a week. I personally was aiming for 30 milligrams once a week. So this lines up with that and my results. But so let's talk about my results because I bet you're just dying to know. A couple things that you would expect to see from someone who was on prednisone are definitely elevated blood glucose. That's pretty much well accepted. HbA1c might also be elevated, which these are two of the markers they use to diagnose type 2 diabetes. A1c over 5.7% or glucose over 100 milligrams per deciliter. The funny thing about this is I didn't even know I was going to be getting blood work drawn. So I wasn't fasted. In reality, this turned into a glucose tolerance test because I eat carbs all the time and usually really big meals. So here's the results. My HbA1c was 5.3%, and my glucose was, you ready for this? 96. That's my non-fasted glucose. Totally nuts. So I basically had no effect of prednisone on my glucose and maybe even improved my numbers. I'd have to get tested again under similar meal conditions to confirm it, but that's a really great sign. Now, when you're on prednisone, you'd expect those numbers to creep up, and not just glucose, you'd expect your lipids to really take a hit. Triglycerides usually climb because prednisone pushes your liver to pump out more VLDL, that's very low density lipoprotein, and slows down the enzyme that clears triglycerides out of your blood, lipoprotein lipase, or LPL. That means triglycerides hang around longer in circulation and climb even higher. LDL, the bad cholesterol, also tends to rise because of that same VLDL turnover shift. And HDL, the good cholesterol, usually drops or at best stays the same. So if I was seeing the typical prednisone effect, my blood work would be going in the exact opposite direction. Higher glucose, higher triglycerides, higher LDL, lower HDL. That's the classic steroid-induced metabolic profile. But for me, at least in this snapshot, none of that happened. My HDL, the good cholesterol, was 88, which is excellent. That's double the recommended greater than 40. My triglycerides were 74, which is 50% lower than the recommended less than 150. And my LDL was 97, which is right under the less than 100 threshold. And again, this was non-fasted blood work. My fasted numbers would be even better. My CRP was also well below the less than 8 threshold, actually less than 3. That's a clear sign that prednisone was actually doing its job on my inflammation. The best part, I put on about 8 pounds of muscle during the this 1 year period. And I've been hitting PRs left and right. A PR is a personal record. I've pinned 5 different machines at the gym I'm at: leg extension, leg curl, pec deck, tricep pushdown machine, and cable bicep curls. And I'm hitting them for reps. I did accumulate a little bit of fat, but not much. I went from about 12.5% body fat to around 13.2 to 13.5. I sort of fluctuate between there, and I'm totally fine with that. My energy levels are perfect. I feel like I could run through a brick wall, to be honest with you. And all of my other numbers were perfect except for creatinine, but I take a lot of creatine, and my creatinine was even lower than it had been a couple years ago. So it's definitely trending in the right direction. And that basically confirms it's not coming from liver or kidney issues. Now, I've shown you my blood work, and I've made the case that you don't just have to sit back and accept what's happening to your body. But here's the part that matters most. What am I actually doing to fight back? Because there's one thing that's the single biggest reason I'm able to hold on to muscle, keep my metabolism firing, and stay as healthy as I am while I'm on prednisone. It's called exercise. So let me show you exactly how I train. This isn't a random workout I pulled off of YouTube. This is a very structured program that's designed to do 3 things: preserve and build muscle, keep my bones strong, and give my heart and lungs the conditioning they need to support me long term. Now, I've been following a variation of the popular push-pull leg split. It goes pull, legs, push, run. Now, you can sub the run with whatever cardio you like doing. I just like running races, and I love running in general, so that's what I do. I structure it this way so that certain body groups are getting rest while working others, and that way I don't have to take any days off. Yes, this means I train every single day. Because of this being a 4-day split, this means everything gets hit 1.5 times a week, and each week will always be a little different. Push day is not always going to be on the same day. I also love this split because if I do decide to run a race and I need to increase my run days, I can very easily modify this program to an upper body, lower body split and run 3 to 4 days a week to improve my race conditioning. Seeing as I'm not training for a race currently, PLPR is where it's at. I'm claiming that, by the way. PLPR split. You heard it here first at Always Adaptive, a pioneer in the fitness space. So to make sure that I'm getting some of the bone density benefits, because that is also another side effect of prednisone, I don't just do high volume stuff. Every workout has a major compound lift where I focus on very heavy sets of 3 to 6. For leg day, it's RDLs currently, Romanian deadlifts. For pull day, it's loaded chin-ups. And for push day, it's incline barbell or sometimes flat dumbbell bench, depending on how my left shoulder is feeling. I've had an injury there for a very long time, so it's very much touch and go on which one I do. It depends on how I feel. And I tend to bang out the heavy exercises early in that day's workout because it's best to do things in order of neurological load. Even though the sets are short at 3 to 6 reps, they're very demanding on the brain in terms of motor unit recruitment. They require a tremendous amount of effort. After that, I start increasing the reps I'm doing as I move into a mix of dumbbells and machines. I've really had some great results mixing both strength and hypertrophy-based approaches during these workouts. Some people call it power building, whatever you want to call it. I've gotten a lot stronger and I've put on quite a bit of muscle regardless of being on prednisone, something that is supposed to eat away at your muscle. Now, I'm not going to give away the full program because it's a special program to me and took me a lot of time to develop it. But if you are interested in learning more about it, I'd be happy to have a free 30-minute sit down with you and take you through it. Just email me at randall@alwaysadaptive.com if you're interested. But in short, this disease can be brutal sometimes. If you struggle with any form of IBD, I really have a lot of sympathy for you. People that don't have it don't understand how big of an impact it can have on you. It can straight up stop you from being able to work. It can control your whole day and life and leave you stuck feeling hopeless. And the medical system doesn't do very much outside of just injecting very, very expensive medications to help long term. So in closing, this is not medical advice. If this protocol intrigues you, send this video or the studies to your doctor. I'll have them linked in the description down below. I think the main point here is that you have to be your own advocate. You have to do some research and you have to try and get healthy. Fitness and nutrition, while not enough to get me to 100%, have still played a massive role in me being where I am currently. This prednisone experiment would not have worked without them. I'm convinced. But I also am proud to say that I know what the F I'm talking about. I've been able to put on some serious muscle and stay pretty lean, all the while improving my strength tremendously during a lethal period in life where I had to rely on a drug that encouraged the opposite to happen. Literally, I'm fighting against a drug's side effects and I'm still pulling it off. But this is what worked for me. It's not guaranteed it will work for you, but you have to be proactive. Like I said, work with your doctor, track your data, and fight for your health. If you don't, no one else will. But that's it for me. If you know someone struggling with colitis or Crohn's disease or any other form of IBD for that matter, Send this video to them. It might just be the glimmer of hope that they need. But if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for more health and fitness content. I like to do a lot of research, and so this channel is basically me just recording what I'm currently digging into. I was a little late on this video as the next project I'm working on is a bit more technical than I thought. So I hit pause on it just to get some content out, and I'm hoping to have that next project released next week. So stay tuned.